Growing up, I always had a strange relationship with my closet. It's a small closet, maybe 6 by 4 feet, and has no door. The doorway to the closet was really small, so if you stepped into the closet when it was empty, every sound you made would echo. The lack of space also made it hard to breathe in there. This, mixed with my asthma, it was enough to make me dislike it. When I was, about 6, my aunt had bought me a playset with a number of small detailed plastic horses. Like any 6-year-old girl, I adored them. Though I had a favourite. She was a black and white pinto horse, who I called Sasha. She was a strong and beautiful looking horse, so I thought a fierce name like Sasha suited her. One day, after playing with Sasha and the other horses, I put them in a toy bin and pushed onto a shelf in my closet. I was small, so at the time, I couldn't see a book underneath it, making a slope. About 20 seconds after putting away the bin, it slides off the book and my beloved horses spill all over my floor. One by one, I picked up my horses. I picked them up and put them back in their home, but I couldn't find Sasha. After a few hours of crying, I filed her away in my mind. Fast forward 2 years. I am now about 8 or 9. It was summer and I enjoyed playing badminton in the front yard with my mum right before sunset, so the sun didn't hurt our eyes. My mum agreed to a match, so I bounded to a closet in the middle of the hallway in my house and began digging through it, trying to find rackets and birdies, this being where we stored them. While I had found mine and my mum's racket, I still needed a birdie. I searched more thoroughly through the closet, and my hands brushed a strange plastic object. I then pulled my beloved Sasha, who had been missing for 2 years, out of the closet, which she hadn't been lost in. Fast forward 5 years. I'm now 13. For my birthday, I desperately wanted a loft bed, and on my birthday, I was greeted to the surprise of actually getting one. I decided to place it so it faced my closet, so if I was lying in my bed, I would be looking into it. I had forgotten about Sasha by now, only remembering her in part now. Anyways, the ladder to the top of my bed was right in front of my closet. This may sound weird, but whenever I climbed up the ladder to my bed, I felt terrified, filled with icy cold dread. Why? Because my back is to my closet, that terrifying little closet. At this point, I thought that there was something wrong with it, and as I write this, I can't help but glance over every few minutes. Once, when I was really tired, I could have sworn that I saw a ghostly pale head pop out of my closet. This could be paranormal, but I should disclose that I had been pulling an all-nighter to study for an exam, so I could have imagined it, but it seemed so real. Not too long ago, I made a huge mistake. I looked up if there were any deaths in my house in its lifetime, and the results scare me. In 1988, a mentally ill man shot and killed his wife and daughter in my bedroom. And if that's not terrifying enough, he tried to shoot himself after this, but his gun was out of ammunition, so instead, he hung himself in my closet. I have always had a sense for the paranormal, to the point where I would see things almost every day at my work. It's a factory now, but the part I used to work in had been a morgue in the past. But I have never had any experience as frightening or as profound as this one. This story takes place a few years back. Me and my girlfriend had been living in a small house for around 2 to 3 years at this point, and nothing really strange had happened. We decided that for her birthday, it would be nice to get a dog, being as she had never had a pet before, and I had grown up with several and loved each and every one of them. We got a French bulldog and called her Cookie, and this is where things started to get a little weird. For weeks we left Cookie locked up in the living room at night so she could have the sofa to sleep on, and she always fell asleep rather quickly. We know this because she snores pretty loudly. One night though, we heard loud barking. At first I thought it was a dog outside, being as I sleep next to the window and it was open. But when it didn't quieten down, I decided to go see if Cookie was okay. I opened the living room door, just enough to get the light into the living room from the hall. She was barking madly at the TV, to the point where she didn't even notice when I opened the door completely and turned on the light. She only stopped when I patted her head. A week after this, I was off work due to being ill, and so my girlfriend went to work as usual, seeing as she was okay still. I remember lying on my bed, playing some games on my 3DS before getting tired and falling asleep pretty quickly. Next thing I know, I'm awoken to a loud noise downstairs, which sounded exactly like the front door shutting. At first, I thought I had slept the day away and my girlfriend was home from work. But then, I started hearing whispering all around me. Without exaggeration, it must have been dozens of voices, all saying my name. It was then that I realized that I couldn't move, right before I heard very heavy, loud footsteps coming up the stairs. At first, I thought it was sleep paralysis, but then the door to my room opened, just fucking opened. I heard the footsteps come towards the bed. I was on my front with my head facing the door, so I would have seen if anyone was actually there. And this is the part that will never leave my mind. I felt the bed move, as if someone was crawling onto the bed, and felt a hand press against the middle of my back. I can't describe how wrong it felt. At this point, the whispers were sounding more aggressive and urgent. My body felt like it weighed a ton, but after a lot of effort, I managed to move my right arm over my head and grab what was holding my back. I pulled, and a severed arm fell next to me. Not mine though, and the feeling against my back didn't stop. I started to cry and said, "Please, God, help me." And in that moment, it all stopped. I sat up, looked where the arm had fell next to me. Nothing. No one else. No signs of anything having moved. Except for the door being wide open. My name is Gia, and I'm an average height female, aged 20. My best friend and I, Susan, always hang out when I come back home from college, and this night was like any other. I was slouched in a comfy position, playing Overwatch. I was running after my teammates as Mercy, trying to keep their dumbasses alive, while Susie was browsing Instagram on her phone. After a few hours of this, my German shepherd Boomy pawed at my thigh. This either meant one of two things. He needed to piss, or he wanted attention. "Alright, Boomy." I pet his soft head as I wait to respawn into the game. "After this match, we'll take you out for a walk." Like I promised, I turned off my PS4 after the game was over and started to pull on my combat boots. Now, Boomy doesn't know what the word walk means, but he sure does know what it means when his human puts on shoes. Susie pulled herself from her comfy spot, all curled up on the couch, and she slipped her shoes on. After getting my dog to stop squirming, I got his leash on and we were off. It's a walk like any other. Susie and I are chatting away about our college-related problems, and Boomy is sniffing random things such as leaves and rocks and pissing on trees to mark his territory. It's normal, until I suddenly feel something dark. Gia, is that a mailbox? My friend asks and points to a gap in the trees across the ways from us. While Boomy has his snout deep in a bush, I look up to where my German friend is pointing, and as soon as one of my eyes locks onto it, my heart drops. What I see is a huge figure that easily towered over us, even at 100 feet away. Its body is darker than the black of the night, and honestly, I don't even know how to describe the outline of the body. It definitely was not humanoid shaped, but it wasn't a blob either. It had more of an animalistic form, but it wasn't quite right. The only thing I can tell you for sure was its very prominent eyes. Eyes that seemed to reflect the slightest bit of moonlight for us to see. They were huge, unblinking and really reflective, which is why my friend asked if it was a mailbox. And the worst part was, they were locked onto us. Now, even though I believe in the paranormal, I don't blame the paranormal for every scary thing that comes my way. So at this moment, I think it's a bear that had gotten lost and wandered into my neighborhood or something. But that thought quickly left my head as Boomy began to whimper and cry with the fur on his shoulders bristled. I looked down at my dog as he's pressed against my legs as he let out pathetic whines, like he wants to protect me but is terrified at the same time. And even though Boomy is a huge wimp, he barks at any wildlife. From squirrels to bears, there was nothing in nature that he wouldn't bark at. So for him to show such fear to this thing made me realize that this thing isn't a bear. With a shaking hand, I take the flashlight out of my pocket and shine it on the creature. That was a mistake for 2 reasons. 1, it revealed nothing new, and by that, I mean that it was still a pitch-black mass with 2 reflective eyes glaring at us. And 2, it let out this screech. The hairs on my arms bristled, but Susie didn't seem to react to this. Before I even think about my safety, I turn my head to Susie. I can feel her fear radiating from her small body, and she looks to me. "Start backing up," I say, as calmly as I could. She listens without protest, and she begins to back up. Now, Susie is like a little sister to me, and if I had to fight off this thing to keep her safe, I would. I was terrified, but I made myself as tall as I could and I began to glare back at this creature. I wanted to give off the vibe that I was not fucking around. Luckily, it showed no interest in following us, as Susie backed up 100 feet or so. Once my best friend was at a greater distance from this thing, I began to back up as well, coaxing Boomy back with me. He listened without a fuss and we made it back to my house without any incident. Now, this was where I thought that this was where the story ends, but this thing wanted to mess with me one more time. I had gone back to college at this point, so I am a good hour away from my home where this happened. A few days ago, I had gone out to get food since everything on campus was closed by midnight. I was walking back to my dorm with a bag of takeout food. As I pass the little wooded part of campus, I freeze. All of a sudden, I feel the same shit hitting the fan feeling I had a few weeks prior when Susie and I saw this creature. And now, it comes from my blind side. I'm hoping it's one of my friends trying to pull a prank on me. But when I turn my head, I see it. Again, all I see is this huge, solid black body and reflective white eyes, just hunkered down and looking at me. I open my mouth to ask something along the lines of, "What do you want?" or "Why are you following me?" But before I could say anything, it opens a mouth I didn't know it had and begins to mimic something. The cry of a baby. Only the wailing is loud and slightly distorted. Yet it is unmistakably a cry of a baby. I stare into its unblinking eyes for a few minutes in shock before I book it back to my dorm.